In the heart of New York City, tucked away on a quiet street corner, stood a small diner that buzzed with life every day. It wasn't fancy, just a cozy spot where locals came for greasy burgers, steaming cups of coffee, and friendly chatter. The staff was always busy, but no one worked harder than Emily Carter. She was the kind of person who lit up the room without even trying. With her warm smile and quick jokes, she made everyone feel welcome, whether they were regulars or first-timers. Emily had been working at the diner for 3 years now, juggling long hours alongside another job just to keep food on the table for her 6-year-old son. Life hadn't been easy for her. Since becoming a single mother after her husband walked out, she'd learned how to stretch every dollar and find strength in places she didn't know existed. Still, despite all the challenges, she never complained. Her co-workers admired her resilience, and her boss often praised her dedication. Until today. It was a typical afternoon, the lunch rush in full swing. Plates clattered, orders rang out from the kitchen, and laughter filled the air as customers enjoyed their meals. Emily moved like a whirlwind between tables, balancing trays laden with plates and refilling drinks with practiced ease. But deep down, she felt uneasy. Her babysitter had called in sick that morning, leaving her scrambling to figure out what to do with her son. Thankfully, her neighbor agreed to watch him last minute, but it meant arriving late to work again. As Emily delivered an order to a booth near the window, she noticed something unusual, a hush spreading across the room. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Mr. Thompson storming out of his office, his face red with anger. He marched straight toward her, ignoring the curious stares of the patrons around them. "Emily!" he barked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're late again this week. I've warned you about your attendance. This is unacceptable." The noise in the diner seemed to fade into the background as all eyes turned to Emily. She froze, her hands gripping the tray tightly. For a moment she couldn't speak. Her mind raced with explanations, the babysitter's illness, her neighbor stepping in. But before she could say anything, Mr. Thompson cut her off. "You're fired," he said coldly, his voice carrying through the silent room. "Hand over your apron now." A wave of shock rippled through the crowd. Some looked sympathetic. Others simply stared, unsure of what to say. Emily felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She wanted to argue, to beg for one more chance, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she slowly untied her apron, clutching it to her chest as tears welled up in her eyes. Without another word, she turned and hurried toward the exit, desperate to escape the judgmental gazes following her. As she reached the door, she glanced back instinctively, scanning the faces of the people inside. Most avoided her gaze, but one man caught her attention. Sitting by the window was a tall figure dressed in a sharp suit, sipping his coffee calmly. His piercing blue eyes locked onto hers, and for a brief second, she forgot everything else. There was something about the way he looked at her, not with pity or disdain, but with intense curiosity. And then she realized he wasn't looking at her face. His focus was lower, drawn to the pendant hanging around her neck. It was a simple piece of jewelry, nothing flashy, but it held immense sentimental value. Her grandmother had given it to her years ago, telling her it had been passed down through generations. Emily never took it off. It was her connection to the woman who had raised her when her parents died in a car accident. Now, as this stranger studied it so intently, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his interest than mere admiration. With a heavy heart, Emily pushed open the diner door and stepped outside, leaving behind the place where she'd poured so much of herself for years. Little did she know, the man inside was already making plans to follow her. Something about that pendant had stirred memories buried deep within him, and he wasn't about to let her walk away without answers. After Emily stepped out of the diner, she leaned against the brick wall outside, trying to catch her breath. The weight of what had just happened hit her like a ton of bricks. She felt humiliated, angry, and scared all at once. Her mind raced, with thoughts about how she'd explain this to her son later, or how she'd pay rent next month. For a few moments, she closed her eyes, letting the cool breeze wash over her face, hoping it would calm the storm inside. Inside the diner, the man in the suit sat quietly, still staring at the spot where Emily had stood moments ago. His coffee had grown cold, untouched since he first noticed her pendant. He couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary was unfolding right before his eyes. That necklace, it wasn't just any ordinary piece of jewelry. It looked exactly like the one his mother used to wear, a family heirloom that had gone missing decades ago. He tried to reason with himself. Maybe it was just a coincidence. After all, pendants like that weren't uncommon. But deep down, he knew better. There were details only someone close to his family would recognize. The tiny engravings on the back, the unique pattern etched into the metal. No, this wasn't random. This was personal. Without wasting another second, he pulled out his wallet, left some cash on the table for his untouched coffee, and walked toward the exit. Pushing open the door, he scanned the area outside until he spotted her standing by the bus stop. She looked shaken, clutching her purse tightly as if it were her only lifeline. He hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to approach her. What could he possibly say? "Excuse me, but is that stolen property around your neck?" That wouldn't go over well. Taking a deep breath, he decided to keep things simple. Walking up to her, he cleared his throat softly to get her attention. Startled, Emily turned around, her eyes wide with surprise. When she saw him standing there, dressed in an expensive suit that screamed success, she instinctively took a step back. Who was this guy, and why was he approaching her? "Hi," he said gently, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I couldn't help noticing your necklace. Could you tell me where you got it?" Emily blinked, caught off guard by the question. She glanced down at the pendant resting against her chest, then back up at him. "Why do you want to know?" she asked cautiously, her voice tinged with suspicion. The man hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "It's complicated," he admitted, "but I think it might belong to my family. Or at least, it looks very similar to something we lost a long time ago." Emily frowned, her grip tightening around the chain. "This pendant belonged to my grandmother," she said firmly, her tone defensive. "She gave it to me when I was younger. It's been in our family for generations." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension between them was palpable, each sizing the other up. Finally, the man nodded slowly. "I understand why you'd be protective of it," he said. "But, if you don't mind, could I take a closer look? Just to be sure?" Emily hesitated. Something about this stranger didn't sit right with her. He seemed genuine enough, but trusting people wasn't something that came easily to her. Not after everything she'd been through. Still, there was something in his eyes, a mix of curiosity and desperation that made her pause. Against her better judgment, she reached behind her neck and unclasped the chain, handing it to him reluctantly. He held the pendant delicately, examining it under the sunlight. As he turned it over, his breath caught in his throat. There it was, the tiny crest engraved on the back, the same one that had been etched into his family's belongings for centuries. And those initials, AR, they matched his own. This was undeniable proof. This pendant had once belonged to his mother. "I don't mean to alarm you," he began, looking up at her, "but I believe this necklace has a connection to my family. My mother passed away when I was young, and this pendant disappeared shortly afterward. We never found it." Emily stared at him, her mind reeling. "Are you saying my grandmother stole it?" she asked sharply, her defenses rising again. "No," he exclaimed quickly, shaking his head. "Not at all. If anything, I think there's more to this story than either of us knows. Can we talk somewhere private? Please, I need to understand how this pendant ended up with you." Emily hesitated once more, torn between walking away and hearing him out. On one hand, she didn't owe this stranger anything. On the other hand, her grandmother had always told her stories about her past, including her time working for wealthy families. Could this man somehow be connected to those stories? Curiosity got the better of her, and she nodded reluctantly. "Fine," she said, "but not here. Let's go somewhere else." They walked together to a nearby cafe, a quiet little place tucked away from the busy streets. Once they were seated, Emily folded her arms across her chest, waiting for him to explain himself. The man introduced himself first, explaining who he was, a successful businessman with roots tracing back to old money. Then he began asking questions about her grandmother, piecing together fragments of their shared history. As Emily recounted stories about her grandmother, a kind, hard-working woman who had raised her after her parents' tragic accident, things started falling into place. Her grandmother had worked as a maid for a wealthy family many years ago, the same time frame when this man's mother would have owned the pendant. Before leaving their employ, she had taken the necklace, not because she wanted to steal it, but because she believed it held sentimental value and deserved to stay within the family. She had kept it safe all these years, eventually passing it down to Emily. By the end of their conversation, both of them were stunned. They realized they weren't strangers at all. They were connected by a shared past, woven together by fate and circumstance. The pendant wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of their intertwined histories, a bridge spanning decades of loss, love, and legacy. And as they sat there, staring at each other across the table, neither of them could have guessed how much their lives were about to change. The cafe was warm and quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos Emily had just left behind at the diner. Steam curled lazily from their cups of coffee as they sat across from each other, the pendant lying on the table between them like a silent witness to their unfolding story. For a moment, neither spoke. The weight of what they'd uncovered hung heavy in the air. 2 lives, 2 families, connected by something so small, yet profoundly meaningful. Finally, the man broke the silence. "I can't believe this," he said, running a hand through his neatly styled hair. His voice carried a mix of disbelief and awe. "All these years I thought it was gone forever, and now—" He paused, looking at Emily with an intensity that made her shift slightly in her seat. "Now I find out it's been with your family all along." Emily nodded slowly, still processing everything herself. "It's crazy," she admitted, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee mug. "My grandmother never mentioned anything about your family. She always said this pendant meant a lot to her, but she never explained why. I just figured it was part of our history." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Let me tell you about my mother," he began, his tone softening. "She wasn't just wealthy. She was kind, generous. She cared deeply about the people who worked for us, treated them like family. When she passed away, it felt like we lost more than just her. We lost pieces of her life, things that reminded us of who she was." He gestured toward the pendant. "That necklace, it was one of those pieces." Emily listened intently, her initial suspicion giving way to empathy. There was pain in his voice, a raw vulnerability that resonated with her own experiences of loss. Her grandmother had been her rock, the person who taught her how to stand tall even when life knocked her down. Hearing him talk about his mother made her realize how much they had in common, their shared grief over loved ones who shaped their lives but were no longer there. "But if your mom was so important to her," Emily asked cautiously, "why would my grandmother take the pendant? Why not leave it where it belonged?" He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I think I know why," he said after a moment. "Your grandmother must have believed it was safer with her. Maybe she thought it would be lost or forgotten if it stayed with us, or maybe—" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Maybe she saw it as a way to honor my mother, to keep her memory alive." Emily's eyes widened. That explanation made sense. Her grandmother had always been sentimental, holding on to things that reminded her of the people she loved. If she truly admired the woman she worked for, it wasn't hard to imagine her wanting to preserve something as precious as the pendant. "I wish I could have met her," the man said quietly, breaking into Emily's thoughts. "Your grandmother, she sounds like an incredible person." "She was," Emily replied, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "She raised me after my parents died, taught me everything I know, how to be strong, how to care for others, how to find joy even in tough times." Her voice softened. Losing her was the hardest thing I've ever been through. For a while, they sat in companionable silence, each lost in their own memories. Then the man spoke again, his tone firmer this time. "This changes things," he said, glancing at the pendant. "Not just for me, but for you too." Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he continued, "you shouldn't have to go through what happened today. Being humiliated in front of everyone, losing your job, it's unacceptable. Let me help you." Emily stiffened, shaking her head immediately. "No, I don't want charity," she said firmly. "I'll figure something out. I always do." "It's not charity," he insisted, leaning closer. "Think of it as restitution. My family owes yours for keeping this pendant safe all these years. Besides, I run several companies. I can offer you a position, fair pay, flexible hours, benefits, whatever you need." Emily stared at him, torn between pride and practicality. On one hand, she didn't want to feel indebted to anyone, especially someone she barely knew. On the other hand, the idea of stability was tempting. Between juggling 2 jobs and raising her son alone, she often felt like she was barely keeping her head above water. Could she really turn down an opportunity like this? "What kind of work are we talking about?" she asked cautiously. He smiled, sensing her interest. "Administrative assistant, to start. You strike me as smart and capable. You'd pick it up quickly, and if you prove yourself, there's room for growth. Trust me, I value loyalty and hard work above all else." Emily hesitated, chewing on her lip. This was a big decision, one that could change her life completely. But as she looked at him, she saw sincerity in his eyes. He wasn't offering pity. He was offering a chance, a lifeline. "Okay," she said finally, nodding. "But only if you promise this is based on merit, not because of some misplaced sense of obligation." He grinned, visibly relieved. "Deal," he said, extending his hand. "And I promise you won't regret it." As they shook hands, Emily felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to imagine a future where things weren't quite so hard. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would transform her life in ways she couldn't yet fathom. Over the next few weeks, Emily started her new role at one of his companies. At first, she was nervous, unsure if she'd fit into such a polished environment. But her natural charm and determination quickly won over her coworkers, and she found herself excelling in ways she hadn't expected. Meanwhile, the bond between her and the man grew stronger, built on mutual respect and admiration. Neither of them realized it yet, but fate had brought them together for a reason. Their connection ran deeper than a shared past or a piece of jewelry. It was rooted in something far more powerful, the human desire to heal, to belong, and to build a better tomorrow. Emily's first day at the new job was nerve-wracking, to say the least. She woke up hours before her alarm, pacing around her tiny apartment while her son slept soundly in the next room. What if she messed up? What if people judged her for not having fancy qualifications or experience in a corporate setting? The doubts swirled in her mind like a storm, but she pushed them aside. She had faced worse challenges before, and she wasn't about to let fear stop her now. When she arrived at the sleek office building downtown, she felt completely out of place. The polished floors gleamed under bright lights, and men and women bustled about in sharp suits, clutching tablets and coffee cups. Compared to the cozy chaos of the diner, this world seemed alien, cold, and intimidating. But as she stepped into the elevator, she reminded herself why she was here. This wasn't just a job, it was a chance to create a better life for her son. That thought gave her courage. Her new boss, the same man who had approached her outside the diner, greeted her warmly when she walked into the office. "Welcome," he said with a smile, shaking her hand firmly. "I'm glad you're here." His words were simple, but they carried weight. For someone like Emily, who had spent years feeling invisible, hearing that she mattered meant more than he could have realized. Over the next few weeks, Emily threw herself into her work. At first, everything felt overwhelming, the emails, the meetings, the unfamiliar jargon, but she refused to give up. She stayed late to learn the systems, asked questions whenever she didn't understand something, and paid close attention to how others handled their tasks. Slowly but surely, things began to click. It helped that her coworkers were kind and patient, often going out of their way to explain things or offer guidance. One afternoon, as she sat typing away at her desk, her boss stopped by. "How's it going?" he asked casually, leaning against the edge of her cubicle. "Good," she replied, looking up with a small smile. "Still figuring things out, but I think I'm getting the hang of it." He nodded approvingly. "You're doing great. Honestly, better than I expected." There was genuine admiration in his voice, and it made her chest swell with pride. "Listen, I know this is a big change for you, but I want you to know, I believe in you. You've got potential, and I think you'll go far if you keep pushing yourself." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Most people saw her as just another waitress, someone whose dreams didn't matter. But this man saw something more in her, something she hadn't even seen in herself until now. As the months passed, Emily continued to grow in her role. She proved to be reliable, detail-oriented, and quick to adapt. Her natural ability to connect with people made her stand out, and soon she was taking on bigger responsibilities. Her confidence grew along with her skills, and for the first time in years, she started to feel like she belonged somewhere. But it wasn't just her professional life that was changing. Outside of work, she found herself spending more time with her boss, now a friend, as they discussed everything from business strategies to personal struggles. He opened up to her about his own challenges, the loneliness of being at the top, the pressure to succeed, the emptiness that came with wealth, without meaningful connections. In return, Emily shared stories about her son, her grandmother, and the lessons she'd learned growing up poor but loved. Their conversations deepened over time, revealing layers of vulnerability neither had shown to anyone else. Emily admired his determination and intelligence, while he was captivated by her resilience and authenticity. They came from different worlds, but those differences only drew them closer. Where he was polished and calculated, she was raw and spontaneous. Together they balanced each other in ways neither had anticipated. One evening, after a particularly long day at the office, he invited her to join him for dinner at his penthouse. "It's nothing fancy," he assured her with a grin. "Just some takeout and a view." Curious, Emily agreed. When they arrived, she was struck by the breathtaking panorama of the city skyline stretching out before them. The lights twinkled, like stars casting a warm glow over the room. For a moment, neither of them spoke, simply taking in the beauty of the scene. "You know," he said finally, breaking the silence, "when I first saw you at the diner, I never imagined we'd end up here." "Here?" Emily echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Eating Chinese food in your $1 million apartment?" He chuckled. "No, I mean, connected. Like this. I thought I was just following a lead about the pendant, but it turned into so much more." Emily smiled softly, her gaze drifting toward the pendant still hanging around her neck. "Me neither," she admitted. "I thought you were just some rich guy trying to stir up trouble." "And now?" he asked, his tone lighter but tinged with hope. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw the sincerity in his eyes. "Now I think maybe fate brought us together for a reason." The air between them shifted, charged with unspoken emotions. He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Emily," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You remind me of what truly matters: kindness, humility, love. I don't want to lose you." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she processed his confession. She had spent so many years guarding her heart, afraid of being hurt again. But here was someone who saw her, not just as a single mother or a former waitress, but as a whole person worthy of love and respect. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice trembling. You don't have to say anything, he replied gently. Just promise me you'll let me be part of your life. Let me help you build the future you deserve. For a moment, Emily didn't respond. She stared out at the glittering city below, her mind racing with possibilities. Then she turned back to him, a small but radiant smile spreading across her face. Okay, she said softly. Let's do it. Together, that night marked the beginning of a new chapter for both of them. As they stood side by side, sharing laughter and dreams under the starlit sky, they knew they had found something rare and precious, a partnership built on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united by a bond stronger than either of them could have imagined. As the weeks turned into months, Emily and her boss, now much more than just a colleague or friend, found themselves growing closer in ways neither had anticipated. Their relationship wasn't just about shared meals or late-night conversations anymore. It was deeper, rooted in mutual respect and admiration. Emily admired his determination, his ability to navigate challenges with grace, and the way he genuinely cared about people despite his wealth and status. For him, Emily represented everything he had been missing in his life: authenticity, warmth, and a connection to something real. At first, their budding romance felt surreal to Emily. She often caught herself wondering how someone like her, a deep, single mother who had spent years struggling to make ends meet, could possibly fit into his world. It wasn't just the money or the lifestyle that intimidated her. It was the fear of being judged, of not measuring up to the expectations of those around him. But every time doubt crept in, he reassured her. You don't have to change for anyone, he told her one evening as they sat together on the balcony of his penthouse. You're perfect just the way you are. His words carried weight because they came from a place of sincerity. He didn't see her background or lack of formal education as flaws. He saw them as strengths, proof of her resilience and character. And slowly, Emily began to believe him. She started letting go of the insecurities that had held her back for so long, embracing the idea that she deserved happiness too. But blending their worlds wasn't always easy. When Emily introduced him to her son, she was nervous. Her little boy was shy at first, clinging to her leg as he eyed the tall man standing in their modest living room. But the man knelt down, meeting the child at eye level, and offered a warm smile. Hey there, he said gently. I hear you're pretty good at drawing. Maybe you can show me some of your pictures sometime. The ice broke almost instantly. By the end of the visit, the two were laughing over crayons and construction, paper, building towers out of blocks and pretending to be superheroes. Watching them interact filled Emily with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. This was what family was supposed to feel like: safe, loving, and joyful. On the flip side, introducing Emily to his world proved challenging. The first time she attended a charity gala with him, she felt completely out of her element. Women wore gowns worth more than her monthly rent, and men discussed business deals in hushed tones over champagne flutes. As she stood beside him, clutching her clutch nervously, she couldn't help but wonder if everyone was judging her. But then something remarkable happened. A woman approached them, smiling warmly. You must be Emily, she said, extending her hand. He's told us so much about you. It's lovely to finally meet you. The comment caught Emily off guard. She glanced at him surprised, and he simply shrugged with a sheepish grin. What? You didn't think I'd keep quiet about how amazing you are, did you? That moment changed everything for Emily. She realized that while their worlds might look different on the surface, the core values they both cherished, kindness, honesty, and compassion, were universal. Over time, she grew more comfortable navigating these spaces, learning the subtle rules of etiquette while staying true to herself. People weren't as judgmental as she had feared. Many were genuinely interested in getting to know her. Meanwhile, their bond continued to strengthen. They spent weekends exploring the city, visiting museums, parks, and hidden gems neither had discovered before. On quieter nights, they stayed in, cooking dinner together or watching old movies curled up on the couch. These simple moments became some of their favorites, Reminders that love didn't need grand gestures to thrive. It thrived on presence, effort, and understanding. One evening, after putting her son to bed, Emily joined him on the porch of their new home, a cozy house they had recently moved into together. Sitting side by side under a blanket of stars, they talked about the future. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice soft but steady, "about starting something meaningful. Something that honors where we came from." Emily tilted her head, curious. "Like what?" "A foundation," he explained, "to help people like you, single parents, working moms, anyone trying to build a better life for their kids. We could provide resources, mentorship, even financial support. Make it easier for them to chase their dreams without feeling trapped." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she listened. Not only was he including her in his vision, but he was also using their story to inspire others. "That's incredible," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "But why stop there? What if we also focused on helping kids, giving them opportunities to learn, grow, and dream big?" He smiled, reaching for her hand. "Now you're talking. Together, we'll make it happen." And they did. Within a year, their foundation launched, quickly gaining traction and support from communities across the country. Emily took an active role, sharing her experiences and connecting with families who reminded her of her younger self. Seeing the impact they were making gave her a sense of purpose she had never known before. Through it all, their relationship remained strong, built on trust and a shared commitment to creating positive change. They celebrated milestones together: their son's first day of school, the foundation's first anniversary, quiet anniversaries marked by heartfelt notes, and candlelit dinners. Each step forward brought them closer, proving that love wasn't just about finding someone who completed you. It was about growing together, supporting each other, and building a legacy that lasted beyond yourselves. A new perspective, as their lives intertwined further, Emily realized that fate had brought them together for a reason. That pendant, once a symbol of loss and mystery, had become a bridge between their pasts and a catalyst for their future. It reminded them that even in the most unexpected places, connections could form, hearts could heal, and second chances were always possible. Together, they proved that no matter where you come from or what challenges you face, love and determination could rewrite your story. And as they looked ahead to the years to come, they knew they were ready. For whatever life threw their way. Years had passed since that fateful day at the diner, and Emily often found herself reflecting on how far she'd come. Life wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, of course, but it was filled with moments of joy, purpose, and love, in ways she never imagined possible. The pendant that once hung around her neck now rested safely in a velvet-lined box, displayed proudly on a shelf in their home. It wasn't just jewelry anymore. It was a symbol of resilience, connection, and the incredible journey that had brought them together. Their foundation had grown into something extraordinary. What started as a small idea between two people determined to make a difference had blossomed into a nationwide movement. Single mothers received grants to start businesses. Children attended after-school programs designed to spark creativity and ambition. And families struggling to stay afloat found support when they needed it most. Emily traveled across the country, speaking at events and meeting people whose lives had been transformed by the work they were doing. Every story she heard reminded her of her own struggles and fueled her determination to keep going. But what made her proudest was watching her son grow up in an environment full of opportunities. He thrived in school, excelling not only academically but also in sports and music. His confidence soared, thanks in no small part to the encouragement he received from both his mom and the man who had become a father figure in his life. They weren't just building a better future for themselves, they were creating one for him too. One crisp autumn morning, Emily woke up early, unable to shake the excitement bubbling inside her. Today was a big day. Their son's high school graduation ceremony. As she stood by the window sipping coffee and watching golden sunlight spill over the trees, memories flooded back. She thought about the days when she worked double shifts, barely able to afford groceries, let alone dream about milestones like this. Back then, survival felt like the only goal. Now, standing here in this beautiful home surrounded by love and stability, she marveled at how much had changed. Her partner joined her a few minutes later, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "You okay?" he asked softly, resting, his chin on her shoulder. She nodded, smiling through tears. "I'm fine. Just thinking about everything we've been through." He kissed her temple gently. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" "More than I ever dreamed," she replied, turning to face him. "And none of it would have happened without you." He shook his head, a tender look in his eyes. "Don't give me all the credit. You're the one who kept pushing forward, even when things seemed impossible. I just helped clear the path." They shared a quiet moment, holding each other tightly, before heading downstairs to prepare for the ceremony. Their son was already dressed in his cap and gown, pacing nervously in the living room. When he saw them, he grinned sheepishly. "Do I look okay?" he asked, tugging at the edges of his robe. "You look amazing," Emily said, pulling him into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." The ceremony itself was a blur of speeches, applause, and proud parents snapping photos. When their son's name was called, Emily clapped harder than anyone else, cheering loudly as he walked across the stage to receive his diploma. Her heart swelled with pride, not just because of his accomplishment, but because of the person he had become: kind, hard-working, and full of potential. Afterward, during the reception, friends and family gathered to congratulate him. Emily watched as he moved gracefully among the crowd, shaking hands and thanking everyone who had supported him along the way. At one point, he turned to her and his dad, his expression softening. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything." Emily hugged him tightly, overwhelmed with emotion. "We're so proud of you," she whispered. "This is just the beginning." Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the three of them sat together on the porch, basking in the glow of the day. Fireflies danced in the distance, casting tiny flickers of light across the yard. For a while, no one spoke. The silence was comfortable, filled with unspoken gratitude and contentment. Finally, her partner broke the quiet. "You know," he said, leaning back in his chair, "when I first saw you at that diner, I never imagined we'd end up here." Emily laughed softly. "Me neither. I thought you were just some rich guy trying to stir up trouble." "And now?" he teased, raising an eyebrow. She smiled, reaching for his hand. "Now I think fate knew exactly what it was doing." He squeezed her fingers gently, his gaze shifting to their son, who was sprawled out on the steps, scrolling through his phone. "We built something good, didn't we?" "The best," Emily agreed, her voice thick with emotion. "Not just for us, but for him, and for everyone we've helped along the way." As they sat there, wrapped in the warmth of family and the promise of brighter tomorrows, Emily realized something profound. Life wasn't about avoiding hardship or waiting for luck to find you. It was about facing challenges head-on, finding strength in unexpected places and holding on to hope, even when it felt like all hope was lost. That pendant had been more than a piece of jewelry. It was a reminder that sometimes the smallest things can lead to the biggest changes. It had brought them together, bridging gaps between worlds and generations and setting off a chain reaction of transformation that touched countless lives, including their own. And as the stars began to twinkle above them, Emily knew one thing for certain: no matter where life took them next, they would face it together, with courage, love, and unwavering faith in the power of second chances.